G'day friends and fans, and welcome to Dave Talk Stuff, Ukraine War Update for the 26th of November 2025. I'm your host, the author David Applegate, author of the books The Boyhood of Cade, Power Games, Into the Elsbound, and Erotic Tales from the Empire, Part 1 out now, Part 2 coming soon. Thank you to all those who support the channel. You can support the channel through the links in the link tree. Really appreciate each and every one of you who support the channel, each in your own way, even if it's just pressing that like button. Like, help the algorithms recommend the videos to other people. And they are making us chase likes like you never believe. And the only other way for me to get the channel out to more people is to pay Zuckerberg and forget the name of the CEO over at YouTube lots of money to advertise the channel to get a couple of cents. Actually, no, advertised videos don't get revenue. I don't expect you to understand, but YouTube is out to get small creators, and I keep hearing people talk about how they want to support small business. Yeah. Now, we've had drone strikes on Ukraine, and this is an interesting view of... Now, obviously, you can tell this place burnt out a while ago. There's some fresh timber. Now, I don't know why, and Ukraine doesn't explain the context to these photos. Now, I've seen some channels try to explain that Russia's targeting civilians, but remember, there's jamming, there's air defense missiles, there's bullets flying, there's missiles flying. And of course, in the midst of war, any propaganda is considered good news. I mean, for all we know, this was a gas explosion. And people will go off at me being a Putin bot, but, you know, that doesn't look like an ordinary hole in the floor. This apartment building, I would submit to you, had some sort of organization which cut holes in the floors. Good, and this, I have seen this before, where secret societies in apartment buildings or secret intelligence organizations would cut holes in the floor to connect to lower apartments so they wouldn't appear on the stairwell, because paranoia. And often we've seen Ukrainian intelligence actually occupy civilian buildings. I mean, it's not like they run around with big signs up saying where they are. But lots of buildings in Ukraine look like apartment buildings, but they are actually government offices. Now, they don't tell you the whole story, because you don't lose a couple of million civilians and then say... and basically, you know, Ukraine is so downplaying how many people died, but I have to keep reminding people that Ukraine won't tell you any military deaths under most circumstances. They might now and again admit to a pilot ejecting and dying, but even then, that is rare, and often, you know, forgetting to tell you he's ejected because a Russian long-range missile is in his tailpipe. But Ukrainians often have things in their tailpipe. But boy, oh, they are losing ground. But slowly, like molasses. This is deliberate. I was debating today after looking at the map, what war would I compare this today? Now, let's look at Napoleon. A wide front? No, not really. He followed a road. Not a very wide front. I think it was spread out over a couple of roads, but that's about it. Now, Alexander, pretty much the same. Linear. Very linear. Now let's look at the Chechen War. First one. Pretty linear. Go in hard. Capture a city. Try to hold it. The problem is, and you can see this in Ukraine, right, in the first year, is that now they have to deal with anti-occupation forces, such as Ukrainian saboteurs, soldiers who remain behind. So they have to grind. But this didn't occur to Putin to grind until the Second Chechen War. First Chechen War, they came to an understanding and an agreement. Ukraine could have had the same thing, and there wouldn't have been a second war, because this time, would have been different. They would have learnt their lesson and said, right, we'll get a deal. But then they thought, oh no, Putin will do a second Chechen War to us, so we won't accept a deal. But the thing is, had the Chechens made a deal and kept it, now not all the commanders broke the deal. I mean, but I'm just saying, if Ukrainian fanatics in the Minsk Accords and the second Minsk Accords had upheld the third, had agreed, instead of going for a third time, to just implement the second Minsk Accords like they promised, things would have been different. Same with Chechnya and many other wars would have been different if people had kept their word. And I know people are going to blah, blah, blah Putin and all the other names under the sun they like to call, but the reality is people don't keep their word, and the West just turns a blind eye to it or changes history to suit themselves. And Russia does it. You don't think China does it. But for the sake of argument, to point out when Putin had an opportunity in the 90s to he came up with the grind set. And this is why he was so angry with the generals when they went in, first hard-hitting, and did not set up the perimeters and secure supply lines as he insisted. Now, again, what we're comparing to, so let's look at Napoleon. Big long lines, not well spread out, no protection for his supply lines. Often, Tatars would harass them from their flanks and disappear into the Crimean forest, because Crimea wasn't, though Crimea was a trap. It was a easy defendable point because no matter how big your army is, it's all funneled through a narrow point. And the Cossacks were able to sweep through Ukraine in a matter of days on horseback, while Napoleon was creeping along because he was trying to drag cannons, and by the time the Cossacks come out of the woods, cut off people's heads and kept going, there was no time to stop, set up the cannons, and most soldiers didn't even carry their guns loaded because in the freezing weather, I mean, there are just so many things people do not take into consideration when they're on the winning side. So we compare Napoleon and the First Chechen War, and you'll see Russia's initial gains were not capitalized on because they did not after taking a city, process it, and instead were bogged down with partisan activity. So, again, when they waited a long time before going into Ukraine, and when they did, it was a grind set. What they did in the Second Chechen War. They didn't target the leadership. They minimized the bombing. They worked with locals who they knew they could trust. And they set up security. And they pushed out. And they laid siege to cities and pushed out those opposed to them. They kept pushing and pushing and pushing. But they never advanced. They grind the enemy down before advancing. So if the enemy's coming to you, and this is cauldron is not new, and it's not unique to the Russians, nor is grinding. I mean, it's just that most people tend to think of war in the terms of the they call it the spearhead attack. Let's call it what it was. Blitzkrieg, okay? Blitzkrieg warfare. Before that, you had World War One with artillery or grinding warfare. And then before that, you had set warfare, in which set pieces moved on a map, eliminating enemy forces until they reached a headquarters or a capital city and took that city, and the rest of the state would capitulate. War doesn't change, just the rules. And the rules of Ukraine is, for Ukraine, it is resistance, resistance, resistance. And in Russia, it's grind, grind, grind. And those who support Ukraine, of course, are of the mindset, it does, as long as it hurts Putin, as long as it hurts Trump, as long as it hurts capitalism, doesn't matter to them how many eggs they break, because they're not paying the bill. But we have the grind regime in Kupiansk. We have areas where there has been, just like Kupiansk, there's many areas where Russia is grinding without advancing. But it's all part of the plan. They eliminate the enemy within and then expand. And as you can see, Russia has expanded its hold on southern Kursk and has taken out the defenders along this route into Kursk, all but eliminating the Ukrainian south of Kursk. Not much elsewhere. Now there's fighting and grinding in Pavlovsk and Marinad and other areas without any increase in territory. There's slight changes to the map here in the west. The grind continues. Russia has gained more territory near Hulapol. They've closed the gap here. A few Ukrainian holdouts. But for the most part, hey, can't go south, go north, go east, go west. They are definitely now going to use the river as barricade, set up artillery, control supply lines, and lay siege to Hulapol. Now, the siege has not begun. They're only just opening salvos and probing attacks. The same we've turned now far from laying siege to it, and they may lay siege to it once the commanders have worked out the spread of forces, supply lines, and security. So they've hit Ukrainians at Zaporozhye, trying to control the road to Zaporozhye. Usual tit for tat to keep thousands of Ukrainians in Kherson to stop the Russians from crossing the river. The Russians are in a unique position in that despite all their winning, the rest of the world just wants to pretend they're not. You can't pretend Russia's not winning anymore. However, Trump's envoy is meeting with Putin to present the modified Ukrainian-American peace deal, as the Ukrainian and Western media want to call it. It is the Trump peace deal with a few provisos for Ukraine. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff is travelling to Moscow next week with Jared Kushner. The deadline has now gone from a hard deadline to a soft deadline. Now, Ukraine is cold, foggy, just like the Russians. The Ukrainians are getting around on quad bikes. A lot of them come from China, right? China's profiting off this war, selling drones to both sides, quad bikes to both sides. When a town falls, the Russians get a lot of quad bikes, and they're all made in China. They've all got Chinese parts. Other than the paint job, there's no difference, right? Both sides have a lot of the same equipment, same body armor, right? Before the war, Russia had bought up a lot of Western body armor from Chinese suppliers, because a lot of Western body armor is made in China, except for maybe I'm not talking about military. I'm talking about the stuff, the second tier stuff. Okay, yes, Russia has a lot of second tier, night vision goggles and that, but they also have a lot of American body armor and helmets and night vision goggles from Afghanistan. But yeah, Russia's attacks on electricity continue and have cut power to several towns in Ukraine. UK, France and Germany has issued a joint statement saying that meaningful progress has been made and they are now planning security guarantees. So the peace deal is moving forward despite fighting continuing. Trump has confirmed to the media what many that they have not properly reported on. Zelensky asked for an extension and it was granted. Zelensky didn't ask for an extension. He said he hoped the deadline was not absolute, as it would take him longer to present the peace deal. So obviously he's presenting the peace deal to his parliament and his people, and he knows that there are people who are not going to swallow the Trump red pill, that they want to remain black-pilled with the Euro-fascists. But the Euro-fascists are losing in Ukraine, and that is not a bad thing. It will teach them to not fuck around. It will teach Europeans to stop trusting blindly politicians and to stop being led by the nose by their fears. But unfortunately, Russia winning a war has only increased the amount of fear amongst the liberal establishment, because the thing the liberal establishment fears the most is anybody being more powerful than them, because then they can't oppress people. Now, Zelensky has advanced the peace plan to Parliament, right? He has that it'll take until next Tuesday by the looks of things. They're trying to downplay, I suppose, the territorial concessions, but Ukraine is wary of being strong-armed into a deal That is largely on Russian terms, but, as Trump said, you didn't want the first peace deal. You said you could win this. You've had time. Clearly, you can't, right? The Russians have broken through your lines. They've taken more territory. It's time to stop this before you lose more territory and more lives. Stop the killing. The sooner Ukraine ends, the cheaper it is to rebuild Ukraine. Remember, folks, Ukraine is fighting to, aka, liberate territory. From whom, no? Because is it just the Russians? Because the people in that territory don't like Ukraine. Russia is not having a hard time in the Donbass. They're having it easy. Any pro-Ukrainian is being ousted. Slowly and surely, these prisoner exchanges, Ukrainian civilians, spies, saboteurs, are being sent to trial. 28 last week put on trial for sabotage. Russia is not playing games, but they are not having mass protests, and they are having a very easy time. So easy, many fear that this is a big trap. A lot of Russians are now skeptical about peace deal being a trap in order to buy time to rearm. But Putin wants assurances that that won't happen, that this isn't just to rearm Ukraine. So they are quibbling about the numbers. The initial numbers Trump put forward was 600,000, although I think last year it was 500,000. I think it was Mark Rutte, NATO, who said it's got to be 800,000. Now, what I would do if I was Europe is not send in troops, but military police, because Ukraine has a crime problem. Okay, all wars. You may not want to hear this, but after World War II, they have found that during the war, because they had taken so many young men away, the police were severely undermined and weakened, and the corruption, the only way to do it was to flood the areas with police. So, yes, you can arrest your way out of crime. Putting criminals away reduces the number of crimes, because criminals don't stop at one crime. They keep going and going. Just ask Uruguay. Look at how far their crime has dropped by putting recidivists behind bars permanently. The key word being recidivists, as in people with long criminal histories who have failed to stop crime after multiple jail sentences. And some of them have... And some jail sentences in America are pathetic, where they go away for 3 years and don't even serve 9 months. Some people have multiple sentences where they're still and on home detention and still committing crimes because they have day release. Or on days they're going to go to court, they have their ankle monitors taken off. People aren't checking the ankle monitor data. It's ridiculous. Now, Russia's offensive, stop the fighting so they don't take any more land. A big concession. This is what they're talking about. Proposed deal to freeze the offensive. We'll see. We'll see. And I'm sick and tired of people saying, no, the ball's in Putin's court. Well, yeah, the ball was in Zelensky's Putin's court. Putin put forward his plan in Alaska, what he would accept, and Trump whittled him down from 10 to 4 points. Then they took it to Ukraine, and Ukraine rejected it, so then Trump came up with a 28-point plan and put it to Ukraine. And they whittled it down to 26 and changed some of the parameters. So now they're taking it to Putin, who's going to probably accept most of it, but it's going to take time to get them both, knock their heads together and get them to accept. Now, the public opinion, unless you're fighting this war, it is hard to explain to you, right, that your opinion, my opinion, I'm just bringing you the news, okay? It's not my place to tell you what's good or bad, but it's not your place to lecture me on what's good and bad. The destruction of Myriad, people's homes, troops doing as they please on the battlefield creates a danger to society. And post-war, crime will go up. People's mental health is severely impacted. Europe needs to clean up its mess in Ukraine, but they don't want to take responsibility. All they want to do is send in an occupation force so they can pretty much control large swaths of the population, right? By forcing its political will through the threat of violence. They let the cat out of the bag when Macron said it would do us great wonders in the future negotiations if we had missiles 6 minutes to Moscow. So, come on. Whether you're left or right, that's not how politics should be played out. That negotiations are done at gunpoint. But that's what Europe... But because the left... The liberal democracy. Well, you're telling me liberal democracy is pointing missiles at foreign capital cities. And you wonder why you're not liked. It is not honest. But, yeah, it's what Russia's doing. The supply lines to Myriad, they are one by one hitting these supply depots, Ukrainian supplies, as you see. They come in small cars. Most of the city, there's no traffic, no movement, anything that moves. This is basic Myriad, the siege of Myriad. Yeah, look at it. It's under Russian fire control. They can fire across the entire town now. Media has been able to go into some parts of Myriad and see the abandoned areas. Now, these look like Russian soldiers. Well, they could be Ukrainian. I thought they were Russian. Usually, Ukrainians have the yellow bar. I just can't see the unit patch. But yeah. The Russians are dropping leaflets on the remaining soldiers to surrender. But as you can see, they're losing them in the wind. Though I think they're trying to target the square where it's the center of Myriad. These big. Now, see the way the ground is? Yeah. There's all these areas you can see. Yeah. They're Ukrainians. Yeah. See, one drone. Okay, they're in basements. There's all this underground throughout Ukraine, and it's unpleasant. It is not conducive to good mental health, to actually root for war, to It creates a psychopathy where you have no compassion. You people who virtue signal about compassion are not compassionate. Compassion is obvious, not forced. Compassion, you can have compassion for animals and still eat meat. You just don't hack them to death while they're still alive. You end it quickly, and compassionately. Although, you're not pack a wild. Here's the problem. I think it's more ego that these people talk about compassion. We're not wild animals. We no need to tear them apart. No need to race horses. It's cruel. It's cruel, I tell you. They're just looking for more and more things to control, and they use it in the guise of compassion, but it's ego, Oh, it's not humane. It's not a civilized activity. They're pretending as if, you're not allowed to enjoy things. Horse racing. You don't know nothing about horses. It's in nature. They race each other. That's what they do. The fastest male gets the breed. The mares will chase after the male, and the male will run and run and run. And as the herd thins out, the fastest mares and the fastest will follow the fastest stallion off into the distance. And once it's whittled down, to a manageable harem, he'll do the deed. This is nature, right? Yes, we're exploiting nature for our own amusement. So what? It's not torture. You are so bored, so manipulative. And the thing is, you notice that none of these anti-war people, right? A lot of them were pro-Iraq, now anti-Ukraine, and yet we also have the people who were against the Iraq war being pro-Ukrainian. It's politics, not morality, that is driving politics. And the politics of the left is whatever hurts the capitalist, because they are so immature, they cannot recognize that every transaction that provides benefit is capitalism, and that socialism is taking everything and giving it away for nothing, and you will have nothing. Thus, slavery. Capitalism is freedom, socialism is slavery. And they're going to say, but Jesus never... You're taking one quote and what's it called? Falsely expanding it to make it look like that was the only statement that, no, the rich cannot enter heaven because they cannot pass through the eye of a needle. It's ridiculous. Because you can't understand that your wants and needs and desires are not the same as someone else. You are pushing your agenda onto others while saying, we must keep Christianity in school because the second or third or fourth or whatever amendment we decide is in our favour until it's not. And then when it's not in our favour, we use another amendment like free speech to make sure that we can run around saying, keep Christianity out of schools, and then they round up the kids and take them to a mosque and say, it's diversity. There is no morality on the left. You see this now, even with the staunchest anti-Vietnam War protesters. Go look at their bios. What's left of them are all bloated with what's that news agency called? My Damn News. It's a Ukrainian news agency that started in 2022. Although it claims to have started in 2014. But its history is all created on one day, It's ridiculous. These phony intelligence operations. The anti-war movement, Jane Fonda, they're all phonies. And we are seeing in real time the collapse of a big criminal money laundering operation. Ukraine is not fighting for its independence. It is fighting to be Europe's parasite, a tick. It is fighting Russia because it's in a proxy war on behalf of NATO so that it can get NATO money, CIA funding, and be a playground for the bored dilettantes, just like Vienna was during the Cold War, or Berlin, or London. Okay? I don't have to explain my experiences or background to people. Those who know. Those who don't, it doesn't matter what my past is or what my experiences is, because I was born at a time when I was a teenager. Ronald Reagan was president and ending the Cold War, and we really thought it was over. And for a short time it was, until Billy Bubba came along and decided that friendship with Putin was conditional on his obedience and the weakening of Russia and the closing of military bases. But then, for a while, we had Bush and trade and things were progressing. But then paranoia set in because we can't have Europe depend on Russian oil. They could control us. So, you want the world dependent on US chips, but not Russian oil. You think if you gotta have a clear, consistent policy. Alright, you're either anti-monopoly or not. You can't have conditions that only benefit yourself. Eventually, people turn against you. It's actually one of the themes of my books. People, however, your books are just dirty smart. Well, that's because you're a pretentious snob who can't see past your own nose. If you don't figure it out, you condemn it. And that is why they condemn Russia, because they can't figure out Russia. It's quite easy. Russia's that kid who's hurt, who's wounded, who's been looking for a friend for a long time. And instead of when you embrace them, they're going to be distrustful. They're not an orphan, more an abandoned child, right? The Mongols came in and fucked them for 450 years. World War II left Russia psychologically damaged. And on top of that, you had World War I and the Russian Revolution. It's left a deep scar on their psyche. And it's Ukraine. Ukraine's had revolution after revolution. From 1883 to 1958. With Militech and the Holdura massacre, the Kiev uprising, the Banderas group, and everyone has always put on that cloak of, I'm a freedom fighter. Yeah, Carl, you're not a freedom fighter, you're a parasite. But because society only teaches hunter-gatherer, you're not taught to recognize the parasite. Because if you recognize the parasite class, you would say, lawyers, you are now on export. Lawyers, you can't. Your wages are now regulated. Doctors, your wages are now regulated. You can't demand hundreds of thousands of dollars for procedures that were developed with billions of dollars of public money. You can't live in mansions and give $1 million to your children so they can start Facebook and then lecture us that we have too much money in the bank, that it's idle capital is a danger to society? No. When you want to tax inheritance, so that just is the Marxist parasite making sure you can't accumulate wealth to break free of the bankers' control. Just like in Ukraine, when Ukraine started to exercise freedom and neutrality and not get involved in wars, Europeans went, no, we can't have that. Other states in Eastern Europe might get the same idea. Folks, but it's not just the Liberal Democrat establishment. The BRI, BRICS alliance, they're not, we can't fix them, okay? We've got to fix our own problems, okay? Fix our backyard first. We can't go into China. We can't fix China. We can't fix ourselves. Europe, they can't fix Ukraine. They can't. It's just a distraction from Macron's failures in France. Domestic policy fails, go to war. War fails, flood the population with fruit baskets and bread, lower prices, declare national holidays, appear in public with your wife. But of course it backfired for Macron when she punched him. Punched him because he was probably high as she probably slapped him because he was high on cocaine. Probably was half asleep. Nobody asked why she punched him, just that everybody knows he did. She's probably sick of his shit. Don't blame him. Katy Perry's already sick of Justin Trudeau's shit, and they haven't been together long. Ukraine. You see Zelensky's wife over in the same room? Yeah, Schrodinger's wife. She's in a box. Is she alive or dead? Let's check his credit card receipts. Lots of credit card receipts from jewelry stores in New York. Yep, she's alive. That's the reality of war. It brings out the worst in humanity. Let's end this thing, and thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. Like, share, subscribe, and support the channel. There are ways to support the channel. Ko-Fi, Patreon, buy my books and my merch. All my links are in the link tree. You find it in the description below, in my profile, or scan the QR code on the screen. I appreciate each and every one of you. See you in the next video, and bye for now.